Hi everyone, this is my assignment for 3.2, Global Perspectives, and we are looking at a lesson where I'm going to amplify student voice using Flipgrid. For this week, I went back and looked at the Sustainable Development Goals and looked at an assignment that already hits number 6. It works on clean water and sanitation. So the assignment I'm sharing is in the middle of our unit on India. And in this unit, we focus on Hinduism, and we use it as a lens to really look at life in ancient and modern India. And this unit also focuses on human environmental geography, and we're looking at water management and sanitation in India. And so we use this assignment as a case study before launching into our #water PBL. For my unit, we always have an essential question, and this question is, how does culture impact the way humans interact with their environment? So I always have an essential question. I think it's a really important tool to help students understand why we're doing what we're doing. In remote learning, I always record the directions and an overview of the assignment and the materials that will be used, and I think it's a really important way to do this to help the students engage in the lesson. And I also provide a written lesson overview. So for this lesson, I would remind students about our previous learning with visual vocabulary and the activities we did to learn about Hinduism. And then I would introduce the actual resource. We will be watching a TED-Ed video, The Surprising Truth About Open Defecation in India. This is a high interest topic, and although at first students kind of are giggly about it because we're talking about open defecation, once we start to study it, they're usually just so fascinated and really engaged because it's a high interest topic. I always refer back to the essential question. I ask students to prepare to write by thinking about what they would want to say before they record. And then the tweak, the new piece of learning for me, is I included a Flipgrid assignment. And I'm asking students to respond to at least 2 of their peers. In a traditional classroom setting, we have 75-minute classes for my 8th graders. We could probably get this assignment done in one class with some homework. Maybe the discussion would be on the second day. But in a virtual learning environment, I found that really it goes at a slower pace for 8th graders. And so I would break this up into 2, possibly even 3 days. Moving forward, I would include some discussion about a global perspective. I think that a global perspective is a way of understanding how other cultures view the world. And then I would explicitly point out to students that this is a lesson focusing on culture and geography in India. And hopefully this wouldn't be the first time I talk to them about a global perspective, because this, of course, could be an entirely separate lesson in and of itself. So I also would spend some time in my video overview going over the essential question with students, and I always include a key idea highlight just to summarize the main ideas and to help students understand why we're doing what we're doing and why it matters. This is part 1 of the assignment, where I have the essential question at the top and the definition of culture. I have 3 discussion questions that students will be asked to answer on Flipgrid, and then I have a link to the video. And this is a really engaging video. This is a woman who has done a lot of research on open defecation of India. She shares just incredible resources and statistics and personal narratives of people who live in villages without access to adequate sanitation. And she explicitly highlights the level of or the impact of Hinduism on culture and on sanitation in India. And so I think it's a great resource to start sharing global perspectives with students. Part 2 of the assignment is the Flipgrid virtual class discussion. I would have a link to this, and not a typo, living in the real world here. But I would ask students to record their thoughts related to the discussion questions on Flipgrid. I also want to remind them that it's a class question. I think posting questions on Flipgrid would be a great way for students to help clarify different ideas and to be leaders by answering those questions. And then I would also require them to respond to at least 2 of their classmates. And then for grading, I can't tell you enough how the single point rubric has changed my teaching style and my feedback, but I think that it creates a situation where grading is not a rubber stamp of approval. It is a conversation about their learning and where they are. And so the single point rubric, I have a link to it. I would ideally put it on Google Classroom so each student would have their own to fill out, and then I would provide feedback. So there's the meets category in the middle with the learning targets. If they feel they need improvement, they could tell me here. If they think they exceeded, they could tell me here. There's a section for student feedback, and then below that it got cut off, but there's a section for Mrs. Norwood's comments. So it is a collaborative grading protocol that I think really creates a conversation versus that rubber stamp that some students are trained to want. So just to kind of jump back into our content and what we covered this week in our course, I keep going back to Schlechty's levels of engagement that John Spencer shared. I think in remote learning, the spring of 2020, my students really went between strategic and ritual compliance. And I think that that has to do with a lot of factors. But one of my goals is to start to move students into engagement and empowerment. So I think that using a platform such as Flipgrid is a great way for students to start feeling more empowered. This assignment specifically focuses on Global Collaborator Standard 7B, where we're using digital tools to broaden their perspectives and also to collaborate with others. And I think that Flipgrid is one of those tools that I would teach in steps. I would start off with just how do we use Flipgrid, and then I would use it for class discussions on certain topics. And then I would open it up to use Grid Pals. I was checking out Grid Pals, and I think it's an exciting way to connect with learners around the world. I just would want to set up my students for success by teaching them the skills they need to be respectful and to be engaged before I just jumped into it. I also think Flipgrid has the potential to really empower learners to share what they're passionate about. And so I would definitely want to keep using it as a structure and routine, not just a one-off, here's some technology, but I think really choosing the technology you want purposefully in a meaningful way is important for kids. And then just to kind of dive in a little bit more, in addition to scaffolding, I think that it's really important to also start teaching students how to put their ideas out there virtually in a respectful manner, but also in a way that they feel empowered to share what they're passionate about, what they are concerned about, and to really feel empowered. I think the summer of 2020 has just changed our dialogue about race, education, health, environment, like so much. And especially as a social studies teacher, we have to have really hard conversations. And in the past, I've had pushback from students and parents because not everyone will agree with why we're covering certain topics. And some people feel that, oh, well, they're in 8th grade, they shouldn't be talking about LGBTQ issues or issues of race. And I push back and I say, I think actually they need to be talking about these things because it's the real world and they're emerging adults. They are really aware of these things. And if you don't make a safe environment for them to discuss them, you're doing them a huge disservice. So I think Flipgrid has this really great potential. I'm excited to use it to help students investigate complex issues. And I think that students would really enjoy it. Here are my references, and I look forward to hearing from you guys in the comments section, and thank you for listening.